I'm talking with Jason Hart, VP and CTO of Gemalto. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Richard, how are you?
I'm doing great. Gemalto's a pretty big company with a lot of products. How do you classify yourself?
We're the world's expert in data protection from the edge to the core.
Okay.
So where an organization has a requirement to protect data, be it within IoT, be it in transit, be it at rest, we are the company that provide that layer of protection.
And global?
Global organization, yes.
Yep. So what are the major trends, I guess, or changes you see in the data protection industry?
Yeah, so recently Gemalto released the breach level index for 2015. And interestingly, there's been a shift in what I call the attack vector. So in 2014, we've seen a lot of attacks at financial information, credit card data. And what we've seen in 2015 is the attack vectors have changed, and the bad guys are going after low-hanging fruits. They're going after data which allows them to collate, hoover up additional data to conduct data theft.
So they're looking for login credentials, not banking credentials.
Correct, yeah. So as opposed to credit card information, they're going after credentials, user credentials.
Yeah.
And for me, that's a bigger problem than credit card information.
Absolutely.
Because if my credit card data is captured or is compromised, it's easy for me to replace my credit card.
Right.
But if my user credentials and other personal information is compromised, I have no visibility. I can't just go and swap out a new card.
Yeah.
And for me, it's the unforeseen risk.
Yeah, it's like we've established an ecosystem that deals with the trouble with credit card theft, right?
Yes.
Everything just is cleared. You get a notice in the mail and eventually a new card. It's kind of a hassle, but you're right. Access credentials could be a disaster, both for individuals and organizations.
Yeah, from an enterprise point of view, it's a huge problem because it's unseen. You know, we put controls in place to say Richard is Richard.
Yep.
So Richard logs in and logs out. So now if the bad guy actually has that credential, Richard is logging in and out.
Yeah.
So it's the invisible risk.
So it always perturbed a security person that people are still just hashing passwords on consumer websites, which alone doesn't seem adequate. Salting maybe a little better, but encryption's pretty easy. Why don't we just encrypt?
I agree, and I think, you know, before we get onto that problem, I think there's a bigger issue. Organizations need to understand what data they're trying to protect and where the data is, and what's the process and what's the flow of that data. And for me, that's the starting point. Yes, we should be hashing and salting passwords in applications, but first of all, it's what is the information, where is the information, what's the flow, and apply some basic principles of information security. You know, what level of confidentiality, what level of integrity, and in the event that data or that particular type of data being compromised or breached, what is the impact? But to your original question, encrypting and applying proper encryption in key management is extremely simple today. Mm-hmm. But if I'm using a web application, why don't I just apply two-factor and multi-factor authentication? It's an easier process and a better user experience.
Yeah. And back to what you said about essentially data discovery and classification, how do you do that? I mean, most organizations have no idea what they have, right? And they don't know it's important until they see it being exfiltrated.
I think we've got what I call this compound effect happening. Over the years, you know, we were starting to apply basic information security controls. Then at the same time, we had this parallel shift where what I call digital disruption was happening. And a great example of that is 4 or 5 years ago, 3 years ago, organizations backed up to a backup tape. Mm-hmm. At the end of the week, that backup tape would be put into a safe. Yep. Most organizations don't use backup tapes now. So that single information security control we're applying by putting the tape into the safe, a physical control to protect integrity and confidentiality, has vanished. So we've got the change in technology, the shift in disruption, but we're not applying or considering the impact from an information security control point of view. So we really just have to step back, look at where our information is flowing, the process, the type of data. Once we understand that process, we can apply the appropriate control to mitigate those risks. And those controls, you know, nothing new. I've been in the industry for 22 years. We have integrity controls. We have confidentiality controls. Traditionally, we used to have availability, which is dealt by virtualization and cloud.
Yeah.
And then we have accountability and auditability. So those fundamental principles of information security you get that from authentication, key management, and encryption.
Yep.
It's so simple.
Yeah. And that's what I love about our business is we've got some fundamentals we can always fall back on
Yes.
and map to
Yep.
whatever the new technology is. Okay, cloud, mobile,
Yep.
virtual, artificial intelligence. I'm sure we can figure out 3D printing and, and all the rest in there as well.
And I think the issue is, that with this disruption and change happening, security, a lot of stuff now in the industry or in technology, it's just a shift. So a lot of stuff is transparent, and we just need to sit back and just look at what is the risk. And there's new risks, but from a different way. And from a bad guy's point of view, it's never been so easy. There used to be a one-to-one relationship, but now there's one-to-many relationships. So from a bad guy's point of view, he's got multiple access points, multiple personas. And if you take IoT and the potential risk in that, the risk can be mitigated and controlled very easily. But now you've got the IoT manufacturer, you've got the consumer data, you've got the cloud provider, and that's just in one use case. And then who's accessing it, who's taking the data feed, different types of data. It's a simple problem, and it can be solved very simply, but it's always after as opposed to before.
So Gemalto has many of those fundamentals,
Yes.
right? If only people would use them. What do you have to help that process for data discovery and highlighting what needs to be protected?
Yeah, so we have various means and technologies, and I think that the simple processes for an organization is to say, okay, what are my data assets? And I call them data assets because they are financial data, personal identifiable information, credit card data. But then go around the business and see, okay, in a HR, what information do you have or data in the event of a breach would cause you embarrassment? And go around to every different department, because every different department will have a view and different data assets. Once you understand those data assets and where they're flowing and where the process of them, you can then essentially apply the various controls. And the first principles are, if you're using any cloud application, and I mean any cloud application, it doesn't matter if it's just a sharing platform or a CRM, access control, two-factor, mandatory. Then once you've applied the initial access control, encrypt the data going in. Once the data going in is being encrypted at rest or at source, you make sure you own the key as well. So make sure the key is outside of the application.
And then protect the key, put it in that lockbox.
Correct, in a hardware security module or HSM.
Right. Yep, exactly.
It's just so basic, and it's such a simple process. But I think, traditionally encryption and key management has had this stigma, it's very complicated. It's not.
Yeah.
The complicated and the hardest thing is understanding what data you need to protect in the first place.
Yep. And I agree, that's the hardest task, right?
Yes.
Because you get everybody in a room, they'll talk about the things that they remember working on, but there's something that nobody worked on, or you'll have one of those strong authentication providers kind of like losing track of the fact that the secret seeds to their tokens was easily available.
And also people think, well, we've got so much data already to go and actually start protecting that. It's a painful process. It doesn't have to be. But why not any new data going into a cloud environment? Why don't you just start now doing that?
Every new project.
And then over time, your percentage of protected data is increased. And people have to get out of this breach prevention. Everyone's trying to prevent a breach. For me, just accept a breach is going to happen, breach acceptance. And some people feel extremely uncomfortable with that. And for me, I want them to feel uncomfortable, because if they can say to their board members or their the business owners, business leaders, to say, look, we're currently in this mindset of breach prevention, but breach acceptance makes people feel extremely awkward, and I want them to feel awkward. By feeling awkward, they're going to actually think, okay, if I accept a breach is going to happen, what data should I really be protecting? And in the event of a breach, it's a secure breach.
Mm-hmm.
So now you go from forget breach prevention, breach acceptance, and then from breach acceptance to a secure breach. So in the event of the breach happening, it's secure. Doesn't matter.
Yep. So if you talk to CISOs today or any time over the last 18 months, the biggest headache and fear that they have is ransomware.
Yes.
So which has an application, even though that is encryption,
They're
encrypting your data.
Yeah.
But it seems like a lot of people scratch their heads and go, "Where's your backups?" Which is a data protection issue, right?
Correct. Yeah. And again, if you understand the key data and where it is in the process, you're in control already.
Right.
And this is the problem. We've got this disruptive technology, virtualization, cloud, and it's going to accelerate. It hasn't even started yet.
Yeah.
And we need to get a grip on it now. And if we don't get a grip on it now, it's going to become a bigger problem, an easier attack vector, and such low-hanging fruit for the bad guys.
Yeah. What progress do you see on full disk encryption, across the board inside the enterprise?
Yeah, I think the enterprise is moving to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So anything going into the cloud, we're back to the days of a mainframe, but it's the cloud now.
Yeah.
So mandatory, any cloud environment should be encrypted.
The problem with a cloud environment is it's usually handling a lot of data quickly, right? And if it's encrypted, it adds time to decrypt. Yes. What do most of the active applications online do? Do they just hold it in memory decrypted?
Yeah, well, you don't have to encrypt all of the information,
Mm-hmm.
just parts of the information, or the sensitive components of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you're putting, financial data or personal identifiable information into the cloud, you just encrypt the particular components, elements, or the forms of that data going in.
Got it.
Performance is no longer an issue.
Yeah. So what's the future look like for Gemalto and data encryption throughout, say 2016?
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time,
Uh-huh.
and I've never been so excited about an industry. I've been in it for 22 years. I think the shift in the way technology and IT is changing is an amazing opportunity, and for me, Gemalto are in such the right position and the right area to, help people progress into the cloud and protect their data.
Is there any, technology avenue that you have to move down to, either work with mobile or cloud?
Yeah, I think, again, just following the shift in cloud adoption,
Mm-hmm.
Gemalto, we're doing that on a daily basis, and ensuring that we're supporting enterprises to allow them to adopt and accelerate into the cloud.
So you've looked at last year's breaches, and I think OPM is, Office of Personnel Management is probably on the top of the Richter scale for
9.6, I think.
And that's
9.6.
pretty high.
Yeah.
I've heard people in DC saying, well, we've experienced the worst that could possibly happen, right? This was the worst. That can't be true. It never is, right?
I don't think we've even seen the worst. I think we're going to see a lot more breaches, a lot more bigger breaches, a lot more impact, and it's just a matter of time. And again, we're making it easier for the bad guys.
Yeah.
And we keep saying that has to be the biggest breach yet.
Right.
It's year on year we're going to see continual bigger breaches.
Well, let's think of some. IRS, Social Security Administration.
Yeah,
there's some big data stores. Yeah.
And and if you think how a lot of organizations, it's distributed environments.
Right. Yeah.
So again, there's multiple attack vectors.
Yeah.
But my prediction to you now, Richard,
Okay.
it's going to be integrity. So think of this.
Yeah.
We're in this world of data now, and we've got IoT coming on stream and very, very quickly accelerating. The next big attacks that we're going to see are going to be integrity based, and the problem there is with the integrity of the data being changed, there's going to be a lag effect.
Yeah.
So the breach would have happened, but 2 years' time, we'll realise that an attack has happened, and the output of the data is been incorrect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I live in England,
Yep.
in a very rural village, very farmy. I have two neighbours. They have tractors. Those tractors are enabled. with IoT.
Mhm.
Now, that data they're collecting allows them to understand the soil quality, the crop quality. But I'm sure the manufacturers are also looking at that data from a global point of view, and they can see at a holistic view of what's going on. That data is very valuable to the commodity markets.
Mhm.
So now, just imagine this: the bad guy has worked this out. He could place money on the stock market. He can alter the integrity of that data and affect it, legitimizing his money.
Sure.
So for me, Richard, integrity attacks are going to be the next big thing.
It'll destroy trust in data.
And exactly, but we would have made the decision based on data that we believed was truthful. So the impact is going to be downstream.
Great. Let's leave it on that down note. Thank you very much, Jason.
No, thank you very much, Richard.